Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Chuck. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Hi, Pete. You're muted, Pete.
I don't have anything to say.
We know that's not true.
Well, it's true. It's Abe Lincoln says something to the effect that if you keep your mouth shut, they'll think you might be a fool, and then you can open it, and they'll be sure you're a fool.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
Great,
you
great
can
quote.
remove all doubt.
Well, hey, welcome back to Friendly Tech Live. I think this is the 17th episode, which I was gone last week, and I'm kind of impressed that I did this for this long. 17 weeks or not 17 in a row. I think I took a couple weeks off in the middle
Yeah,
there. But I've been having fun doing this. It's been really nice for me to
yeah,
stay more up to date on uh the news. A lot of times I get stuck in fixing people's technology, talking about technology, or teaching technology, but it's easy to be removed from like right now, what's happening, looking at my
yeah.
newspapers and reading. So thank you guys for being my audience and and coming because I've been having a good
So,
time.
Matt, a news blurb that I saw this morning, I think it was CNBC, and it was that NVIDIA is now at like 2.7 trillion in valuation. And Wang, who's I think the owner of like 3 or 4% of it, is now worth 97 billion.
Oh.
And if it doubles one more time, he'll be the wealthiest man in the world.
And it
Well,
probably will, right? It probably
Just
will.
from Nvidia and that wealth, he's probably gone from a billion or two 5 years ago to
yeah,
93 billion today. I mean,
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. I forgot to invest. I didn't buy that stock.
Hey, I bought one of my first stock purchases. I had the Cash App. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but
Uh,
Venmo, but but you can buy stocks like penny stocks with it. And so
Yeah.
5 years ago, I literally opened it and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I could buy like penny stocks. And I bought, I think, $50 worth of Nvidia, and it's worth like, 250 or like 350 bucks now or something. So not bad.
Um,
Amazing.
But yeah, no, I heard they're the biggest company in the world, or they're on track to be, right? It's like it's gonna be soon, they think.
I'm not certain. It's valuation is what you're
yeah.
talking about, not size.
Mhm.
And it's all a measure. And I'm not certain, Matt. I'm not certain. 2.7 trillion. That's got to be damn. I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right.
Well, in terms of valuation, that's one thing, but I don't think it has, 100,000 people working for it or anything.
Or it's
Yeah.
revenue base. Its revenue
Yeah.
base
Right,
is,
right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
yeah.
We could probably, if only there was some tool that we had at our disposal that could tell us how big the oh no, yeah, biggest Saudi Aramco, they say, is the biggest. Interesting. Walmart, Amazon, China National Petroleum, by revenue, this is. So I don't know.
Right.
Depends on what you want to. Then Apple
So,
and Exxon. Um, Interesting. Well, hey, there's been a lot of news going on. The last time, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the release of Chat GPT's latest model, their latest version, which is Chat GPT 4.0. And it's been taking the world by storm. I think its release was the most hyped. I mean, everything AI is very hyped up. Like people are just excited about everything that happens in this category, I should say. But Chat GPT made by OpenAI is kind of the front runner, in my opinion, in terms of when people think about AI, they think about Chat GPT that's made by OpenAI. So OpenAI is kind of Maybe you could call it the Apple, the brand to beat. And they were in the news quite a bit the last couple weeks. Um, because of their new release, which is pretty phenomenal. The biggest update is that it can now use your camera and perceive and analyze your visual things happening through your camera. So you can essentially FaceTime or video chat with this AI. You can flip the camera around. You can say, hey, what am I looking at right now? Hey, what's this plant doing over here? All in real time, and it will respond to you in a very human-like voice. And speaking of human-like voices, I've been saying for months now, or since we started doing this show, if you want to get a good idea of maybe a potential path, a sci-fi glimpse into the future, a movie that you want to check out is called Her. So I don't know if you guys ever
I've heard
saw it.
of it. I've heard of her, but I don't know what it's about exactly.
It's
Did
it's
watch it, yes.
it's a movie about a man who falls in love with an AI voice assistant
Oh, okay.
whose voice is actually voiced by Scarlett Johansson.
Oh yeah,
And
she's mad
and
about that. She's suing
yeah,
somebody.
and so you might have seen it's kind of funny, like
Yeah,
the two worlds have collided. I
yeah,
guess there was a recent story that Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, reached out to her early in the year or last year, requesting her to be the voice of his AI, which is like I've been saying from the beginning, it's like the exact same thing. It's like they are, this guy just has a little AirPod in basically
yeah,
and is talking to
yeah,
this
yeah,
attractive woman AI. Never see her face. He never sees her. That's the kind of
yeah. Yeah,
um
she's not happy about that.
yeah, but then so they ended up
She
making the
just
voice
yeah,
called, and they called it Sky, and well, she declined his offer basically.
yeah,
And he basically made a version that is very similar. You could say, I think that was, and he tweeted, I think it was last week, right after the release, or a few days after the release, he just tweeted something that was very cryptic. It just said her, like the word her on his Twitter
yeah,
account. So
yeah,
clearly he's kind of like tongue in cheek, poking fun. Maybe there was, I'm sure there's a whole backstory. Uh, but she's very mad because the
yeah,
voice of the new AI sounds exactly like her. They called it Sky.
yeah,
Her character was called Samantha, and so
yeah,
she's threatening to sue. And
yeah,
not too many other details that I caught other than that.
yeah, yeah,
But
So Matt, if you go back to your previous intro about ChatGPT 4.0 or 4.0, interesting that Microsoft is a huge player in that company. I think like 49% ownership. And they were the ones who, I think, put Altman into the chair, and they were the ones who tried to attract Altman to come to Microsoft to head up their AI effort. And I think that was a stillborn effort. But it speaks to the incestuous nature
yeah,
of so many of these assets.
yeah. The Wall Street Journal had an article by the former Attorney General Barr. He says this is awful situation with these big companies buying pieces of like you just described, and they're a monopoly. Between Microsoft and Google, and they're buying up all the startup AI people, and there's not going to be any competition. That
So
it's in the Wall Street Journal, the whole article. He's very
on the,
concerned. Yeah,
on the positive
yeah,
side,
yeah,
all this is occurring in the United States.
yeah, yeah,
This is the epicenter of a huge
yeah,
engine for the world over the next decade or two. And
yeah,
if you're over in Russia and saying, "Oh my God, how the hell we don't even have we're not even able to read the guidance on these things, much less steal their technology." And
yeah,
then you go to Germany who's saying, "We've got the technology, but we don't have the horses. We can't, we're so dwarfed by the intellectual power of Silicon Valley and the
Yeah,
multiplicity of companies. So we're
yeah,
worried about concentration, and everybody else is worried about that we're running away with it.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's this Barr guy, former Attorney General under uh, twice, latest under Trump. That anyway, he's not happy. He thinks it's a big problem. But you'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think one of the stories that I wanted to talk about today was another big player in the AI world. His name is Yan LeCun. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he's a chief AI scientist at Meta, and he published a big um, piece about how he is actually about the limits of AI. And so he knows, more about it than just about anyone, I would assume. And he posts a very detailed explanation of why he actually thinks the current model for AI, which is based on predictive language, essentially, the way I understand it is when the way that an AI takes chat GPT, for example, will answer your question. It's trained on a huge set of data, and that's the majority of this process. It's like a massive amount of data that needs to be fed and learned on. And then it's pulling from that data every time you ask it a question. And the way that it generates the response is it generates each word individually. So it picks, the first response and then the word, and then the next likely word, and then the next likely word. And it's doing it like each, hard to even wrap your brain around it. But
It's
he's
not,
saying that essentially that mechanism is why he thinks that AI will never reach generative intelligence, or which means to the point where it can train itself and learn as maybe a human would. So that was actually a pretty interesting a pretty interesting piece. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We also have some, I thought just because of the new release of ChatGPT 4.0, which sounds a lot like C3PO from Star Wars, that's what I keep thinking of. We will also talk about just some cool examples that I've found browsing through Twitter, browsing through the news about how people are using it. So maybe let's start with that, and then we'll jump into the deeper aspect of the limits of these large language models, and we'll have a good discussion.
Matt, can I go back to your words of generative AI?
Sure.
And it seemed to me you almost defined generative AI for me, who doesn't know what generative AI means, but it sounded like you said to be generative AI, it needs to be able to self-educate. And this guy's saying the structure of ChatGPT 4.0 doesn't have a structure that allows it to self-generate. Are both those correct?
Yes, correct. I will say, I don't know if he said, yeah, but I think that's the takeaway. We will go into the article, but yes, the the main point is right now AI is trained on massive amounts of data, and actually that's where all of the energy is put. So you might have heard a lot of people are concerned with how much computing power and
yeah,
electricity it
yeah,
takes, and from my understanding, it's the majority of creating an AI is training it. That's the you have to put it through. I guess it's like training anything. Like if I went to the gym, the majority, if I want to get a big body, right? It's like the majority of it's going to be in the weight room training. And then once you get the big body, then you can lift the strong stuff. That's kind of the analogy I see it as. And so, yes, generative AI would be able to create its own data and then train itself on that data. So right now we're basically combing the internet, combing YouTube, combing media archives. That's a very rough, description of what they're doing, and they're feeding it to this AI to train it. But it's only limited to the AI. The AI can only take what we are giving it. In the future, they anticipate that the second that an AI can create its own set of data and train itself on that, is when it will truly mimic more of a human-like intelligence.
So,
That's what we
so
can
it
do,
won't be able to
right?
turn
We
off
can
my
create
computer. It
our
won't be able to turn off my computer and tell me to forget it. Turn off my
yeah,
iPhone.
yeah, maybe. I think
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
don't
What's
know.
more
your
I
like
hope.
how we think. It'll be more
what's
like
your
how we engage with the world, right? If I walk down the street and I see a new building that I've never seen before, that's new data for me.
Yeah,
And I can
yeah.
choose what I want to do with that data. Maybe I can go inside, maybe I can look around, maybe I can find a map, maybe I can take a picture of it. Then I can go home and study it and research the architecture of the building. That's more of what human intelligence is versus like the process that AI is using right now is like they're in a cage. Essentially, it's like they're in a cage based on the limits and the data that we give it, and it can't really break out of that cage yet.
So it won't be like the guy in the old movie where they wouldn't let him turn off the computer and let him back in the spaceship.
Yeah, we'll
Hal or
see.
whatever.
right?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
So Matt,
yeah.
what's your definition of generative AI?
The best definition I've heard is an AI that can teach itself. If I had to simplify it,
Got it.
versus an AI that is being told what to be taught.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, I want to throw up a couple. I thought you guys might find this interesting. I found this very interesting because we always hear that AI is going to take everybody's jobs, right? Or robots are going to take all of our jobs. And that might be true. But I also like to share when there's things that I think will be created by AI, micro industries, tons of industries that people are forecasting will be created. And this is ChatGPT 4.0's response to a user's inquiry that said, list 20 new human jobs that will be created in place of jobs that ChatGPT will be basically told ChatGPT 4.0 to anticipate or imagine what some human jobs will be based on the new version of ChatGPT 4.0. And I thought it was actually kind of inspiring. So let me pull up this table. So it made this table. We'll just read through a couple of these. Can you see this all right? I can make it a little bigger. There we go.
Better. Yes. Thank you.
Um, so AI ethics specialist and it ranked it. So it made 20, it made a table and it ranked it number 1 through 20. So number 1 is AI ethics specialist. Ensures AI systems operate within ethical guidelines and addresses potential moral concerns. To me, this reminds me of like diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. Seems kind of more of like a time. I don't know if I don't know if you guys have seen, but that industry, diverse DEI was like, really exploded after the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protests. And now they're actually it's kind of the whole industry is kind of like collapsing. Like because it became so popular, I think a lot of people got into it and there was opportunity. But to me, this one actually reminds me of that, where I don't know. I don't really agree with, I don't see that being number 1, but AI maintenance technician, definitely. Repairing and maintaining AI systems. AI integration specialist, I thought is probably already huge, but people who can help business integrate AI systems into their existing workflows and processes. AI trainer, I don't really understand that one too much. Human AI collaboration manager, absolutely. This is something that I feel like I do, for people in my personal business. Like I want to probably package this and do more of it, but because I feel like I am more familiar with AI than, many older people who I work with. For the people who are interested, I really help them learn new ways that they can use AI in their everyday life. And I think that'll be huge, especially as it gets better. Um, people think that AI is going to be magical, and then it's going to be remove the need for computers or remove the need for screens and mice and keyboard. And I think it will remove a lot of things, but I still think you're going to need somebody to teach you how to do it at the end of the day. I feel like there's still going to be a human element that will be around for a while before it gets really, really good. Um, but anyways, those are my favorites. Human AI collaboration manager, AI integration specialist, maintenance technician,
Isn't there a
AI.
longer list, Matt, going down? Is nine
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, there is.
But all these jobs are about AI. All these new jobs. It's nothing about building a house or anything.
That's true. I think he was specifically, the question at the top specifically says, list 20 new human jobs that will be created in place of jobs that GPT-4
Yeah.
replace human. So
But so they're not talking about other.
no, they're not talking about jobs in general. So
Yeah,
let's
I gotcha. Okay.
AI systems analyst, data privacy officer, that'll be probably huge. I could see that being massive. People are very concerned with what they're just like at Alexa. I remember the days where people were like, we will never have a thing in our house that is listening to us all the time, like Alexa. Now look at us.
I'm
And
amazed when I'm driving my car, talking to Marty, not thinking of a Siri at all, and suddenly the radio is talking to us
yep.
about what we were just talking about. Said, no, I can't find a blumpy bump, bumpty blump. What else do you want me to look for?
Oh gosh.
Yep.
Well,
AI adoption consultant. These are kind of similar. Adoption consultant, content curator, strategy consultant. I don't think it's the best. A lot of these sound similar to me. So it's still not, that's another place I feel like you can see the limitations is when you ask AI to do a really creative job, it'll do really well for like, in my opinion, 3 to 5 things, but it won't give you 20 really good ideas consistently. I think a lot of these are very similar. For example,
yeah.
AI legislative advocate, AI privacy, AI ethics, ethical policy developer. But, I thought this
So,
was an interesting list.
Matt, to say something that concurs with what you just said, I think one of the most powerful things you can do in a company is periodically get the right group together to brainstorm an issue the company's trying to solve. And it's amazing what five smart people can come up with that's significantly greater than any one of them could come up with. And part of it comes from the stimulation of one smart person on another smart person, taking him or her to a place they hadn't thought to go. But once we're there, suddenly their experience blooms. And so, I mean, the human capability is amazing. What I like about this list is it talks about the specific mechanical steps if you were a CEO that you should be thinking about relative to your company where we could create some positions that are going to help us amplify the future of AI in our company. And I happened to write down something called an AI applications engineer, and I said, "There's nothing like that on there." Yes, there is, called an AI integration specialist. And then here's the number, it's listed number 20 as educational tools, but that's going to be huge when we bring the AI world successfully amplifying the ability of teachers and their methodology to impact students. So I like this, but I totally agree with you. Take this list and now get five really smart
Exactly.
leadership type humans, and my God, the action plans you could get are awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't even, I kind of glazed over that last one. AI enhanced educator. Like, can you imagine if you created if you became a government contractor? Right now, I'm across the street from an elementary school. I grew up right next to an elementary school. My dad is very involved. And when I've volunteered through Rotary a lot in some schools in Denver, but I look at the schools and I just can't And then I look at my computer and I look at the school and I'm like, this school, one of these things is going to change very, very much very soon. And if you could become the contractor, the government contractor, the agency that is the expert, the center on how to integrate AI into the classroom, in a safe,
Exactly.
safe, respectful, productive, cheap way, man, it's going to print money.
And I have another observation about CEOs and running companies in the AI world, and that is that the smart ones are getting involved absolutely as quickly as they can, getting teams working as quickly as they can, because it's hard to come in on a sequence of things that go develop on a project, and I'll wait till somebody gets to this level, then I'm going to jump in. To learn as you iterate, as you grow, as you begin processing, and that's important for a company to have that experience of having addressed the problems and learn from how we address the problems, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to get it so much more refined. And we won't waste all that startup effort. The reality is you develop tools and skills and knowledge when you wrestle with a given art and move it forward. Now, my experience in that was in the analytics world back in the 80s. And our experience was just go as fast as you can and do it yourself. Look for companies to buy that are also smart, and that's what you buy. So you buy some progress. Anyway, I just feel that where we're at with AI and that list of 20 for a good CEO is just like catnip. Get started.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. It's gonna you almost look at, I wasn't really quite conscious yet at the dot-com bubble, but I always imagined like how exciting that time must have been, where it's like everything will be an app, everything will be a website. Like, and I don't see, I mean, do you guys see any similarities between this and that? Because
Yes.
is this more, does this feel like less, are people less aware of it? Like, what's your kind of read on, you've lived through both, like, to me, they're similar.
I think they're similar. I think this one's just bigger. And in fact, everything will be apps. It's happened. It's reality.
Yep. And
I
now
don't know how many apps there. I don't know how many. Go ahead, Matt.
now I think everything, and I think similarly, you just said everything will be apps, and then it became apps. Absolutely, everything's online. And then now everything will be AI. I think that's the next. It's going to be everything. Everything will be AI in some form, you know. And
I
so
think this one has hugely more impact on productivity than did apps.
yeah, well, it removes the negative of the apps. The apps and the internet and technology, incredibly powerful, increase the capacity for human ingenuity and creativity and production exponentially. But it left a lot of people behind. And a lot of people don't understand how to use it. Obviously I'm familiar with that with my work, but it's still there. It's difficult. Like coding is difficult, designing things in Photoshop is difficult. It requires a lot of technical expertise. To me, what I see with AI, it's going to be everything is AI, which is everything is speed and everything is easy. It's going to be like what people anticipated technology would have been like, you know, 20
Right.
years ago. I think that's going to be the difference because with the way that it can understand human speech and writing and voice and read, um, it's so quick and it's so simple that literally I've told you one of my favorite things to do now is to put on my new Ray-Ban AI glasses, go for a walk, and just talk to this AI. Just literally just talk to it like I'm just asking unlimited dumb questions about a random subject. And it's amazing because I'm learning so much. It's connected to the internet, it's pulling real-time data. It's like I'm talking to a genius person, and of course it's not perfect, and it's very rudimentary at this stage, and it doesn't always understand what I'm talking about, and sometimes it repeats itself. But you can see that this is something really serious, and it's going to affect every level of society. I think we'll see.
So, Matt, think how much this AI world, how much it's going to improve the app experience. That, the apps, if 40% of the people really can't function with the current app because they're not capable of getting there, an AI enhanced app may take us to 70% of the people can, in fact, use successfully and leverage the power of all the apps that they ought to have in their life.
Yep.
So, I mean, this has some potential to put apps on steroids.
Yeah. Yep. And it's already happening. If you search your favorite app and just do a Google search, something AI, every app has a quote AI. And right now, a lot of it's fool's gold, in my opinion. Like it's literally all just based on Chat GPT. Like they just
Right.
package up Chat GPT and put it into their, customer support, or something like that. But that's actually a good trade. I want to show one more example of a Reddit post I found that was an interesting, good use case of Chat GPT 4.0.
Be right
And
back, guys.
yeah, disclaimer, anything you see on the internet can be fake, all right? And Reddit, that's probably increased like 80%. I think half of all Reddit posts are probably fake, but they're entertaining if they're not, at least they're entertaining even if they are fake. And this post I found on Reddit was a guy that used Chat GPT 4.0 to take out their HOA, their homeowners association. So let me pull this up. Let's see. Let's see. And this was in like an AI thread of what people have been doing, kind of a nerdy thread, but a little bit wordy, but I'll read it to you. So this guy posted, this is 10 less than 10 days after Chat GPT 4.0 had been released. He said, I began receiving unsubstantiated HOA violations, as in my property is immaculate and there was absolutely no reason to be receiving these things. I used it, ChatGPT, to begin the process of documenting these actions and investigation/strategy. The management company was being difficult, so we began inundating them with long-winded emails and wording such that we are documenting this process and it shall be recorded that no response confirms X. The entire time we were asking for a reasonable and amicable resolution, which of course was consistently ignored. I'll stop right there for a second. Feels like it's giving a weapon back to some people to deal with who have less resources. That's a cool thing. Like a lot of times law can be used as lawfare. And I don't have much experience with the law or with the courts, but I know that that's a thing that can be done. And so to me, it's kind of like you're getting a little mini lawyer. You're getting like a really bad, like maybe a really crappy lawyer, but it's better than nothing in your pocket with Chat GPT. So then he goes on to say, then we put in a public records request for all violation notices issued to the community for the past year. In an attempt to overwhelm me, the HOA attorneys deployed the classic legal strategy of sending literally all records for all time as thousands of PDFs nested into inconsistent directories with about 30% duplicates. Which that's funny because I have worked with a couple lawyers and I've seen this happen, like where it's like they send a bunch of files. And so he goes, I LOL'd, no big deal. We wrote a script code to gather the documents and convert the PDFs to text and remove duplicates. With the clean text files, we wrote another script. So this guy's obviously got a little bit of coding ability. We wrote another script to concurrently call the GPT 4.0 API using OpenAI function, calling to extract consistent data from them in JSON, which is a database coding language. That cost was $9 in API fees and only took a few minutes of time. With the new data set, we ran analysis to find enforcement anomalies. We then took the data subset and dumped it into a Google map. And just like that, we have proof of targeted and selective enforcement. We held those, so that the legal speed, I don't know, maybe Pete, you can help me out with some of this, but then he goes on to say, we held those cards close to the chest as we closed in on who was responsible for the issuance of the fake violations. Turns out it was a board member. After getting the board to sign off on the condition of my property, we wrote a message to the board to hopefully bait one of them into driving by the house to perform an unwarranted inspection. I had just finished upgrading my security cameras to 4K with views up and down both sides of the street when they took the bait. HOA Karen just couldn't help herself. Now we have video evidence of the HOA president driving out of her way, stopping at my house to take pictures and then speeding off without stopping anywhere else. Targeted harassment. We then engaged the HOA's law firm with a demand letter, and based on all the evidence, I'm confident that we got him. I thought that was funny. But
Oh my God.
translate that for us, Pete. You know, us, I'm not a lawyer. To my knowledge, Chuck, you're probably kind of a lawyer, but I have no law experience. But I thought that was a funny way to use that seems like again, 50% chance that's real, 50% chance that's just the average Reddit guy who's making up a story because it's interesting. But that was interesting.
One of my observations about lawyers and running businesses, which is maybe a little bit different than this guy's doing. But it took me, the distractions of litigation are so large to an operating company that and that's one of the reasons companies sometimes will pay off, noise suits just to get rid of them. But if you get into this mindset of I'm never going to get fucked, I'm never going to let the law, I'm never going to let somebody push me around. Suddenly you're doing that instead of running your business, and that is totally dysfunctional. And what I find is a good lawyer helps me keep the legal distractions off my world. And yes, I have to pay to have that done, but they tend to address it early, quick, and inexpensively, and without any input from me. And 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 as a result, you can run your company better. You don't have the distractions, and you're working on the important stuff, not the noise.
Yep. 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 No, it's pretty cool. The part that stood out to me was that, basically this guy dumped a bunch of documents on him after he requested access, to some records. And I think that's one of the most useful things about ChatGPT that I've actually been able to do is you can throw ChatGPT 100 PDFs and tell it, read this, pull out whatever you want to pull out. What's the summary of all this? Hey, and you can continue manipulating it, right? You can continue asking it follow-up questions. How many times was this word mentioned? How many times, what do you think they meant by this? And so it really opens up a lot of possibilities for people that might have a harder time understanding complex language, legal speak. And so I thought that was a really cool way to use it. And I don't know if Pete's talking, but you're muted, Pete. If you're are you
I well, it just can sort through so much information. It's unbelievable. The AI or a human being couldn't read all that crap that the guy got.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Think about a senator or a congressman or one of their staff support people, what they can now do to read through a bill
Yeah,
that they couldn't do previously. And then you're talking
yeah,
about a bill that might run 1,600 pages or
yeah. It's
600.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah,
And in those 1,600 pages, the really artful Washington bureaucrat knows how to implant something that comes out of that law that nobody expected, and yet it was there. Just nobody could see it because it
yeah,
was hidden with the minutia in the 1,100 other pages.
yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, you read about the length of those bills. It doesn't make sense that you could actually read and understand it and vote on it the
Absolutely.
next day. The next day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. John Klug just joined. Hi, John. That's funny timing because John sent me an article from the Wall Street Journal, and it was called The Great AI Challenge. We test 5 top bots on useful everyday skills. So basically, Wall Street Journal did a battle of the AIs, and they used uh, they competed Microsoft's Copilot with OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, along with Perplexity and Anthropic's Claude, which that's the only AI on this list I haven't used. Anthropic's Claude. Anthropic is another guy who's like the founder of that is like the up and coming baby Elon, maybe. Pretty impressive guy. But they ran a series of questions by all the different AIs regarding health and finance, and they ranked the answers basically on what they got. And I thought it was a pretty interesting concept. So let's poke through here. John, what was your take? Are you here, John? You want to give us any takeaways from that?
Well, Perplexity came out tops, and we've been talking about Perplexity for some time. So the different ones had different strengths, but overall, Perplexity came out on top. That was the takeaway for me.
Yep. Yeah, I gotta say, I've used ChatGPT more. Not sure why, but I've found that Perplexity gives me what I want faster, and it's more reliable because it gives sources.
Well, that's my thought too, is that when you use the others, you're not really sure what their sources are. But at least with Perplexity, you can go and check the sources, and you know they're not just making stuff up, but the computer's not making stuff up.
Yeah.
So I trust Perplexity. The others, you're going to always wonder. I mean, they give fabulous answers, but you're always going to wonder, are there mistakes or points of view that are not really valid?
Yeah.
John, do you know who's the money behind Perplexity and who's the engine? And we discussed earlier, I mentioned earlier that ChatGPT 4.0 was 49% owned by Microsoft, and there's a very incestuous relationship between these two companies. Do you know who the key player is, or are they a lone ranger? I doubt
Well,
it.
I've read who is behind it. I can't tell you here without going and looking, but it's quite available, Chuck. Just do a Google on it.
So did you say it was Google that in fact was one of the key players with
No,
Perplexity, or
I'm sorry. I fell victim to what we often say: do a Google on it. But I mean, maybe do a Perplexity on who is Perplexity.
He said GTS, Chuck. That means Google that shit. That's what he means.
right.
All right. Yeah, good point. Amazing how that noun becomes a verb to Xerox, to Google, to do this, to do that.
The only problem I have with Perplexity is it doesn't quite, I think it's too many syllables to be used as a verb. You know, you can't really say like perplexity that, you know.
Oh, good point. Good point. Well, perplex is what you perplex that.
Perplex
Right.
that. That doesn't roll off the tongue, you know, it's a little bit difficult to spit out.
Understood. Well, good point. But yes, it's available and it's a VC funded endeavor. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, and I just did a search on ownership, and it's hard to believe Perplexity only was founded 2 years ago, um, and and it lists 4 key engineers, and one of them came out of Meta, another one came out of OpenAI. It doesn't, as of yet, I don't see it, John. Of note relative to this is that if this is only a 2-year-old company and ranks number one, of course, there weren't any of them 5 years ago. It's notable in the journal today that Musk, apparently with no problem, raised $6 billion to do an AI startup,
yeah.
and that was
And
reported. That was reported today.
right? And the Chinese have just raised a huge fund as well, like 10 times that size.
Yep. Yep. I think Musk is gonna the next so there's also the lesser known, excuse me, still have a little bit of allergies. The lesser known AI of these top fives that we just talked about is XAI, which is Elon's or Grok, which is a feature that is available to Twitter or X users that pay the $8 a month subscription. But I've heard some promising, it's Elon kind of brands it as like he's done with the X platform as the free speech platform, kind of a more a counterbalance to the liberal Silicon Valley tech politics. I think that's kind of he's like, well, we're going to make an AI that's truly honest. That's not going to censor based on what's politically incorrect. A lot of people have done some research on that, and it's not that different from the other ones, frankly. But I think that the next release of that AI, the next version of Grok. Have you guys heard of Grok? Either of you use Grok?
No,
But yeah, that's the one built into X or Twitter.
Spell it. Grok. Spell
Grok, Grok. And some rumors the next version of that's going to be pretty amazing. And everybody's talking about GPT-5 is going to be like a lightning jump also. So it's a race.
John, you weren't here when we discussed how the rest of the world is feeling right now, as this AI epicenter tends to be mostly in the Silicon Valley and certainly in the US. And I would imagine the fear. China has enough technology base that they're going to be right in there pitching, even though they're probably behind. Russia must be feeling terrified, John, because they don't have the technological teams and resources to be developing it. So I guess they're going to be fast learners and other people's technology. But do you have any sense, John, on or perspective on thoughts as to how the world is feeling relative to this incredible technology race that we have going on right now? And we were at the time, John, talking about our fears of it getting too consolidated. And I said, yes, that may be a problem for us, but the rest of the world, that probably scares them even more. John, any thoughts?
Well, I come at it a little bit from the side. It's one thing to be able to write the software to process the AI, but it's quite another to get the NVIDIA chips. And what they don't have and don't have access to, although the Chinese will surely catch up eventually, but they don't have access to the NVIDIA chips that are being produced in Taiwan for NVIDIA, nor do they have access to the NVIDIA software, although I'm sure they're trying to steal it. Because as you know, NVIDIA wrote its own software to process AI on its NVIDIA chips. And that's another huge advantage of NVIDIA is and a large or wide moat that NVIDIA has over the other chip producers is they have the superior software as well to process on their chips. So I think it's the chip side that even makes your point stronger, Chuck. And who's gotten access to the NVIDIA chips, or at least as ubiquitously as we do? The Europeans, I would assume, can, if they want to pay the $30,000 per chip, have access. But can they raise the billions and billions that Microsoft and others have spent just to buy the NVIDIA chips and have access to the NVIDIA software?
John, ironically, what our precursor to that discussion started with the 2.7 trillion valuation of NVIDIA just today, and that and Huang, who's the CEO, was now 97 billion worth of net worth and could be the wealthiest man in the world if NVIDIA doubles one more time. But all that is an underpinning to what you just amplified beautifully. Says we're in congruence, John.
Yes. Now the question is, what are the implications of that? And that's a whole nother story. But that plays into the Taiwan issues. TSMC has already announced that they have a way to disable everything there if the Chinese were to attack. And so China, thinking they could get access to the 2 nano chips in Taiwan, is not going to be a fact. But I think Taiwan will ultimately play into the ultimate Ukraine settlement, that China will support a Ukraine settlement and pull back their support of Russia in exchange for us agreeing to let Taiwan become part of China in 25 years, shall we say, as part of the same deal that China had with the British to turn over Hong Kong after 99 years. And China did adhere to that agreement, and I was in Hong Kong and watched the flags be changed when that changeover took place with the British. So this thing is all of this is part of a worldwide realignment that's going to take place in the next year or two.
It's ironic. I love the Christmas of your scenario, John, but the world looks at the British experience with Hong Kong is, yes, they honored the agreement for 25 years, but Hong Kong has been in decline ever since its assimilation. And, Shanghai has eclipsed them as the economic center of China and Asia. So Taiwan would have that same fearful, but Taiwan may not be in control. It may well be in our control solely, in the Chinese, and they're just a pawn.
Who's just a pawn?
Taiwan, not a real player, meaning that the two players that'll decide what happens to Taiwan is going to be China and US, not Taiwan.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And to your point, did the Chinese agree to keep Hong Kong independent? No, they didn't. But it was a peaceful transfer. It hasn't gone as expected. It hasn't gone as expected afterwards, but it was a peaceful transfer.
It was so interesting how China basically turned the levers that allowed Shanghai to grow and Hong Kong not to grow, and that's so how Hong Kong was so quickly eclipsed. And it was a conscious decision by the Chinese, not a random market-driven happening.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Wow, that was nice. I'm glad that I'm recording that so I can go and debrief and study some of that stuff a little bit outside of my technological wheelhouse.
How many people think that the ship crashing into the Baltimore Bridge was an accident?
Didn't seem like an accident to me, but I don't know anything. Seemed a little bit too.
Well, John, I did assume it was an accident. And what's your theory?
Well, the Chinese control most of the maritime software. They control most of the major ports of the world now. And to think that was a total accident at least has to be questioned personally. And I've read a lot. The intelligence community thinks it was a terrorist act.
Wow.
It seemed negligent. I thought negligence was probably involved in terms of sending the ship out without power when they knew they couldn't control it. But I don't know about the rest of it, obviously.
Well, the Chinese wish to target our infrastructure, whether it's power infrastructure or naval infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they have the resources and capabilities to do so.
Well, John, if you say the goal wasn't hitting the bridge, the goal was to continue to probe and test and undermine the infrastructure of the navigation, and this happened to be one where they were running a drill or an actual decapitation of the system, and the bridge accident resulted, and it could have well gone into another ship, or it could have whatever. I would agree with that. If you were saying that bridge was targeted and that ship was directed to hit that bridge, but that isn't what you're saying. I don't think it's what you're saying. You're saying that whole accident was driven by a Chinese decision, whether it was to hit that bridge piling. I don't think you're saying that, and I don't think that was what they're doing. Being an old Navy guy, I totally understand this tragedy, and I think John Klug has heard me say, I feared for 30 years with the nuclear submarine Navy that we were going to have a barge filled with petroleum run amok and hit a nuclear submarine. The barge blows up and the nuclear submarine cracks open, and we have a major radiation accident. My point of that is that the infrastructure of Navy control is very, very complex, and there's risks there. So I'd love to talk to you, John, and hear more about was this an accident or not?
Well, the simple fact, I don't know if it was an accident, but a lot of people think that it probably was not an accident. And switching subjects slightly, but back to the question of infrastructure, and as a submariner, former submariner yourself, think what the Chinese can do if and when they start cutting fiber optic cables on the seabed. They can literally bring certain countries, certain parts of the world to an absolute standstill.
And John, likewise, I've heard fears of them intercepting what transmits over those fiber optics. And we all know, or I think we all know, that's exactly what the US naval intelligence did to the Russians on the cable that was in their major port on the Arctic Sea. We actually laid a torpedo-like device on top of that cable, and for 5 or 10 years, we had unencrypted messages from all levels of the Russian military on that intercepted cable. So it's a terrifying world ahead of us in this sort of crypto warfare that that we are going to have. I don't mean crypto, I mean cyberspace and cyber security warfare.
And we haven't even talked about space warfare, which was discussed in today's Wall Street Journal.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, interesting times.
Interesting times is right. Well,
May you live.
we don't have time for my last story, which was diving a little bit deeper into Yann LeCun, who is the chief AI scientist at Meta's theory on why the current direction of AI is not going to reach artificial general intelligence. So we'll save that for next time. Also gives me a little bit more time to understand what he's saying, because this is a very, very smart guy. And I want to make sure that I can run a few more things through Perplexity, so I'm not sounding like a bumbling idiot up here. But that's it. That's been an hour. Thank you for coming and discussing with me, and we'll be back next week. Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, John.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.
Good to